Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County Forum for candidates for Legislative District 38, Position 2. I'm Valerie Cole Kelly, a member of the League. This forum is being live streamed to our League YouTube channel. To those in the virtual space, thank you for joining us. Let me provide some background on the position. Members of the legislature enact or reject legislation affecting public policy in the state, provide for the levy and collection of taxes and other revenue to support state government and assist local government, and appropriate funds for these purposes. The House is made up of 98 members, 2 from each legislative district in the state. The total membership of the House is up for election each even-numbered year. This is a partisan office, and candidates may declare a party affiliation. Candidates for Legislative District 38, Position 2 are Mary Fosse and Marnie Claywell. It is the policy of the League to be nonpartisan. Therefore, we neither endorse nor oppose candidates or parties. The rules for participation in this forum were sent ahead of time to all candidates, and they have agreed to follow them. I will pose the questions and will clearly state the amount of time allowed for each answer. We are using a countdown timer visible to all candidates, and time limits on answers will be strictly enforced. The order for the first question, which was determined randomly, will be Mary Fosse, then Marnie Claywell. I will then alternate candidates in the starting position to ensure a fair sequence. So let's begin. Candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to this first question. And candidate Fosse, your question is, what are the major issues you feel need to be addressed by this office? Please explain why you are focusing on these issues. 90 seconds.
Well, that sounds like a very good question to start off the night with. Thank you again for having us all here. And I have very much enjoyed my time at the legislature and working in the House. It's a new role for me. This is my first time running for re-election, and I come at it from a point of view of having experienced homelessness myself, growing up when I was a child. And so that is one of the issues I think that we are still struggling with. That is a priority. Housing is such a big deal. One of the major policies that we'll be focusing on that we worked on this last session, and hopefully we can get it through, is the renter stabilization. And that is going to help folks with the skyrocketing cost of living in rents and housing, while at the same time making sure that we are being accommodating for our neighbors who may have entered into that middle class realm of trying to be the mom and pop landlords, and making sure that the policies we're doing are still being nuanced enough to make sure that they are not put out or not losing those forms of housing being available. So a lot of other efforts will still be made in this next session regarding housing and homelessness, as we continue to do. It was a very big priority this last session, but the renter stabilization is definitely a big one, along with the rest of the cost of living, childcare, et cetera.
Great. Thank you very much. Ms. Claywell, same question. What are your major issues you feel need to be addressed by this office?
Thank you for having me. I have 3 that I will be focusing on. The first one being public safety. Reason being, Washington State has the 3rd largest crime rate, and we're dead last for all states for safety. And for the 13th straight year, Washington ranks dead last in the number of police officers per capita. Secondly, the economy. I'm focusing on this issue because, as an example, we are 3rd highest for gas prices, 4th highest for cost of groceries in the nation. We have the 4th highest unemployment rate, and we're 35th in the nation for business climate. Additionally, we've had 10 straight years of tax increases. Thirdly, education. I'm focusing on that for probably many obvious reasons. Our K through 12 children on average are failing math 60%, reading 50%. 72% of Washington 8th graders are not proficient in math. And we rank 48th in college enrollment after completion of high school.
Great, thank you. Next, Ms. Claywell will start the next question with you, and you have 90 seconds for this question as well. What qualifications and experience make you a good choice to address these issues?
Thank you. I've worked in the finance industry for over 35 years, from mortgage origination to nonprofit operational management, including contract management and grant application and management. My experience has equipped me to successfully collaborate on tough issues to secure solutions that we can all agree to implement, regardless of the group I was working with. I sincerely believe that we need to address tough issues by first determining what we agree on and then move forward towards how to address the issues together. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Fosse, how would you answer the question, what qualifications and experience make you a good choice to address these issues?
Thanks for the question. Well, the lived experience aspect is very valuable in Olympia, but on top of that, this last biennium working there, I had one of the top bipartisan bills with, I think, nearly 62 co-sponsors to expand the Working Connections childcare. So I am definitely one that loves to work across the aisle and find those common foundational values. And I pride myself on that work. I absolutely love my job. I wholeheartedly put in all of the effort to make sure that we are getting things across the finish line from start to finish, making sure that we are following through. I'm very intentional on the work that I do and have been very successful. I have passed all of my bills each session in some form, with the exception of two, which is pretty unheard of and very effective for a legislator. And a lot of those policies have been for the working families in our district.
Great, thank you very much. Timer, please note that the candidates will have 60 seconds for these next questions. And we know that's short, but we know you can do it too. So timer, please adjust the clock. And Ms. Fosse, the next question is, this legislative session will enact the 2025-27 biennial budget. If elected, what will be your funding priorities? Again, 60 seconds.
Thanks. As always, my funding priorities go to helping support the communities and the people of my district, as well as Washington as a whole. So making sure that those services are in place, keeping people from becoming homeless, and making sure that we have, economic development, but economic development that actually supports working families. It really is going to actually depend on what happens with the initiatives, because with those going through, we might have some serious, significant budget holes that we'll have to accommodate. This next session is going to, given our revenue projections, going to be a tough one in evaluating how we're going to delegate those dollars. But first and foremost, I think that those dollars should be going towards supporting people, making sure that they're healthy and safe, and making sure that our working families are supported.
Great, thank you. Ms. Claywell, your response? What would be your funding priorities?
My funding priorities would be our K through 12 public schools, public safety, and support services for persons with developmental disabilities and their families. In my work experience, I've worked closely with families, and I've also had family members with developmental disabilities, and the support required for the caregivers, as well, of course, as the population with developmental disabilities. They're some of our most vulnerable, and so that's one of the reasons, that's one of where my heart goes for, personally, where my heart goes.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Claywell, we'll begin with you for the next question. What actions would you take or what policies would you endorse, if any, to address homelessness in your district? 60 seconds.
Thank you. I would endorse policies that expedite a low-cost permit process for builders of single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, and ADUs for low to moderate income households. Increase housing options through lot splitting and new tax credits to incentivize landlords to voluntarily lower or freeze rents, and production of more stable and affordable housing solutions.
Thank you. Ms. Fosse, homelessness.
Well, a lot of the background policies that I have worked on have often been to make sure that folks are getting the supports that they need to not fall into homelessness, because we know it is more financially challenging to help people come housed after they are homeless, rather than, the efforts put into the prevention. Get much more bang for your dollar in that, and a lot less trauma. So it's much more humane that way. So making sure we're expanding those support networks and those safety nets. I've had several policies that I've worked on for that, with coming to caregivers and people in apprenticeship, and making sure that we're supporting our workforce. I come from that lived experience in poverty and homelessness, and I don't want my neighbors to experience that. So it's going to take a multi-pronged approach, and we're making strides. We just need a few more policies, and we're always doing better. So that's another thing I'll be working on this next session.
Thank you. And Ms. Fosse, we'll stick with you for the next question to be first. What policy and funding changes would you make, if any, related to public school education? And how would you change how would you change any proposed to improve the quality of education? What changes would you make to propose the quality of education? Ms. Fosse, would you like me to repeat that? Are you okay?
No, I think I understand. And this is something that it sounds like Ms. Claywell and I also share as a value, the importance of education, and supporting those students with different abilities. My son started out with an IEP. And I know that our paras are also very, very important to our education system. So I appreciate her giving ode to that. That is something where we are seeing that we need to continue to support our mental health and counseling supports in our schools. I worked with our capital budget committee this last session to make sure that we were providing safe learning places and a safe environment for our students in the Marysville School District. A lot more work needs to be done to support them. They're going through some trials right now. And I'm also working on some childcare related things with our capital budget and how we are funding our capital construction of new schools.
Great, thank you. Ms. Claywell, same question, public schools.
I support policies that would hold school districts accountable for the, student performance, and challenge the superintendent of public instruction to provide curriculum resources to schools that mirror K through 12 institutions that have the highest student test scores and performance rankings, not just in the United States, but best across the globe. I'm also, I was also very disappointed to find out that in the past, special education for students with disabilities hasn't been fully funded, and I would fight for that to be fully funded. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll stay with you, Ms. Claywell. What, if any, environmental legislation or regulation is a priority for you?
Still unmuted. Okay, great. So I would support the superintendent of public lands with legislation requiring forest management practices that ensures thriving forestation that isn't susceptible to fire dangers. An example of that would be ensuring that our forests are managed and removing dead and diseased trees, just as an example. So that would be my focus. Fires result in smoke, which is not good for our health for obvious reasons. So that would be my focus.
Thank you. And Ms. Fosse, what, if any, environmental legislation or regulation is a priority for you?
Again, that's going to rely a lot on the initiatives and what happens with those this next session. A lot of the dollars tied to those are going towards dealing with air quality issues so that children with asthma can actually breathe, water quality issues, funding, our roads and our transportation systems. And if those initiatives make it through repealing some of the policies that we enacted previously, our priorities are definitely going to shift this next session to try to figure out how we can fund those. And I'm very wary about the dollars shifting to funding those being on the backs of working class families. So seeing what happens with the initiatives is definitely going to shift those priorities. I've worked on environmental policy in the past. In this last session, I had worked on some things to make for large buildings easier to have more energy efficient upgrades. And I like working in that space, so I'll continue to be there. You're on mute. Valerie, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fosse. We'll stick with you for the next part of the question. Next question. Is there an idea or position from a political party different from your own that you think is worth considering? Please tell us more. Ms. Fosse?
You said a value from a political party different from my own that's worth considering. One
Yeah.
thing that I often hear, which is a very nuanced area, is when it comes to permitting and citing. And I think that that is one of the things where you will hear different opinions on different sides of the aisle, uh, and hesitancy and eagerness. For good intentions in both spaces. And so I think that is one of those things where we really have to collaborate and work together to make sure that, for instance, like looking at childcare and looking at where we're citing those in our permitting processes and our rules about providing quality childcare. We definitely want quality childcare and safe places for our children to exist, but we also want affordable childcare and childcare sites to be built. And so if we have overly prohibited processes in place that do not allow for that, overly cumbersome permitting processes and siting restrictions, then it just makes it more expensive. So both sides have some good ideas.
Thank you. Ms. Claywell, is there an idea or position from a political party different from your own that you think is worth considering? Oops, you're on mute, sorry.
I'm sure there is, like as Mary mentioned, having onerous processes for permitting certainly is time consuming, which equates to money. So that would be one. Both sides of the aisle want to see our students succeed. We just need to find the best way to get there. So that would be my thoughts on that.
Great, thank you. Okay, Ms. Claywell, staying with you. Next question. How satisfied were you with the most recent Washington State redistricting process? Are there any changes to the process you would recommend? Please explain. Ms.
I
Clay-
was not satisfied. I don't see the clock, by the way. I was not satisfied to learn that the commission in the 11th, I'm referring to, of course, to the redistricting commission, which if nobody knows, that's 2 people from each party and then an appointed 5th person. Anyways, I was not satisfied to learn that the commission in the 11th hour chose to go behind closed doors instead of remaining in the publicly noticed meeting. Then the commission came back to the public meeting to vote and approve the redistricting, but did not share the results with the public, violating the Washington Open Meeting Act. They also did not disclose to the public the reasoning for their decision. Most of the decision-making was done behind closed doors. I would recommend 1, a nonpartisan commission made of citizens, not political appointees, and 2, eliminate the legislature's ability to amend the commission's decisions, and 3, complete transparency of the commission's actions.
Thank you. Ms. Fosse, redistricting.
So I served on the Everett Districting Commission, and one of my main emphasis there was definitely public participation and transparency. That those were really, really of high value to me. Given the last process, and I say this with I love every neighbor in my district. I am very happy with the community that I represent. But I do hope that the maps will be made public prior to voting the next cycle. I think that's something where we can always improve, and we can always do better. And government is one of those things that is a process where we constantly reevaluate and adjust, and nothing is, ever necessarily perfect. And I think that's just one of those spaces where we can do a little bit better in that transparency and the public being aware of what's going on.
Thank you. And Ms. Fosse, staying with you for the next question. What will you do, if anything, to support a vibrant economy in your district?
That's a great question. As you know, I serve as vice chair of the Labor Committee in the House, and that is one of my primary, things that I fight for, and that's because I support working families. So I have ongoing policies where I'm working to make sure that we have responsible bidders that are getting the tax dollars on our public jobs, making sure that working families are supported and that they have living wages to contribute back to the community. I now serve on Underground Economy Task Force and a variety of other places to help ensure that working people are given a fair chance and given a chance to move up in this world and be able to contribute back to our economy, and making sure that we're supporting our small businesses at the same time. So I have a lot of different policies that I'm working on going forward, and childcare, that's like a big one for me too. So we can't have a workforce without childcare.
Thank you. Ms. Claywell? Whoops.
Yes, I am. I will support eliminating, I do support eliminating the capital gains tax and allow for energy choice to support our residents as well as businesses who rely on gas fuel to operate their businesses. History has shown that reducing tax stimulates the economy. Additionally, assuming those all pass this fall by the voters, I will collaborate with my colleagues to find other ways to reduce taxes.
Thank you. Okay, speaking on some of those same issues, we're going to talk about the initiatives that we'll be voting on in the next election. You'll have 30 seconds to respond to each initiative, and we're going to take them one at a time. And candidate Claywell, we'll begin with you. Do you support or oppose Initiative 2109, which would repeal the capital gains excise tax imposed on long-term capital assets by individuals with capital gains over $250,000? Please explain in 30 seconds.
I support it because I believe this tax adversely penalizes successful wealth builders who contribute to our economy and supply jobs to Washingtonians. I also believe that Washington State can afford it because they have accumulated a $19 billion surplus over the last 5 years. In my mind, this is the first step by the progressive leadership to inch us towards an income tax in Washington State.
Ms. Fosse, your response to Initiative 2109.
I'll be voting no on that initiative. It gives a tax cut to nearly 4,000 of the wealthiest Washingtonians, and those are not the folks that are struggling right now with inflation and all these other issues. It will cut dollars to our childcare and early learning, and that's exactly what I'm fighting for right now. So I definitely will be voting no on that initiative.
Thank you. And sticking with you, Ms. Fosse, the next initiative, do you support or oppose Initiative 2117, which would prohibit carbon tax credit trading and repeal provisions of the 2021 Washington Climate Commitment Act, the CCA? Please explain in 30 seconds.
So I was actually a staff person in the legislature when the Climate Commitment Act was being worked on. And gosh, that was like a very complicated policy. And I see it now from the other side, being in the position that I am, that this very, like, the Climate Commitment Act is a good thing. So I will also be voting no on the repeal because that will be stripping like dollars from keeping our water clean, keeping our air clean, paying for our roads and our services. And it's going to be shifted to the backs of working class families to support those efforts. And so I will be voting no.
Thank you. Okay, and Ms. Claywell, Initiative 2117 carbon tax.
I will be voting to repeal that. It has done nothing to curb carbon emissions. It's increased gas prices by nearly 50% a gallon and driven up energy costs by 40%. They've spent more money on government planning than wildfire prevention programs. I agree we need to do something that works to keep our air clean, our water clear, and our soil healthy, but this program is not working and it continues to be funded on the backs of those who can afford it the least, which just isn't the answer.
Thank you. Okay, and Ms. Claywell, the next initiative starts with you. Do you support or oppose Initiative 2124, which allows all employees and self-employed individuals to opt out of the long-term services insurance program? Please explain in 30 seconds.
Sure. I support the initiative because I believe Washingtonians deserve to have a choice regarding their healthcare needs and how they spend their money. And it still allows for folks who want to use it to be able to use it.
Ms. Fosse?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of complicated issues behind this that is not easily messaged to the public. And so the folks that brought these initiatives forward, it's a super wealthy group of people and corporations that want the working class people to pay for these things. If we don't, if we repeal the long-term care, it's going to negatively impact like women, especially who will have to leave the workforce to care for other people, and it will break our Medicare and Medicaid system.
There's 30 seconds. Thank you so much. And Ms. Fosse, I'm going to give you the first opportunity. Would you like to ask Ms. Claywell a question on anything stated today in today's forum? You would have 30 seconds to ask a question, and she would have 60 seconds to respond. You may or may not decide to ask a question based on what you've heard tonight.
Thanks. Uh, First off, I want to say, Ms. Claywell, I'm very glad that you ran. I highly encourage women to participate in this sector, and it is tough to go out there and put yourself out there. I know how that feels, and we may be on maybe the opposite side on some issues. But first, I just want to put that out there that kudos to you. I know that that is very, very tough. In this process, and I know I learned a lot through mine. Is there anything that you would have changed? Because it seemed like your website information changed to be about initiatives later on versus your voter pamphlet statement. And I'm just wondering if there was any changes in your priorities.
Um, I may need to sort of interfere in that because it wasn't about what we talked about tonight.
Well, she had talked a little bit about the initiatives, and it seemed like that had been where a lot of her priorities had shifted to. And I didn't hear anything that she had said. It was more about what was kind of left out. I was just wondering if there was anything that had changed um, based on where she had been at. Is the priorities primarily where the initiatives are?
My priorities haven't changed, so to speak. But there were a lot of things that went on right after I decided to throw my hat in the race, including my mother passing. So I was a little bit behind the 8 ball in a few things. So
Sorry for your loss.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Claywell. Would you like to ask Ms. Fosse any question about anything you've heard tonight about what she said? You have 30 seconds to ask and 60 seconds to answer.
Sure. I thank you for your comments and for your service. It is not, it's hard work. I'm just curious, when you were answering about initiative 2124, which is the long-term services insurance, I think you mentioned it's not easy to communicate to the public. I didn't quite understand what you meant by that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question. What I mean is some of these are so complicated that they can't be put into like one-liners for like messaging very easily. And I was also curious about the Long-Term Care Act and how that actually would impact people and what the nuance was behind it. And so I've reached out and dove a little bit more into what was behind it because I heard a lot of the concerns and a lot of concerns coming from the constituents early on. And as I learned more about the very complicated policy, I realized the reasons behind it. And the reasons behind it is we have a workforce issue where women are being burdened with the care of loved ones, and there's no support out there. So this actually has an equity issue to it, and it also has a financial outlook issue because Medicare and Medicaid are very, very important to our community and giving the age wave that is happening. And we have a lot of people that are retiring and now moving on to that. It's going to put a huge stressor on our Medicare system. So
Thank you.
it's
I know our timer is a little bit
okay. Yeah, no worries.
appreciate that. Okay, and Ms. Fosse, um, is there any question or issue or policy that wasn't covered in today's forum that you'd like to address before we get to our final question?
I think because I work in the workforce space so much, and given a lot of my recent efforts, I think that childcare is a really underrated and not talked about enough issue that is impacting businesses as well as workers and families. the sheer cost of it and the fact that it's not accessible. So when you are out there trying to find the care, if you can find it, it's expensive, but it also doesn't have the non-standard hours. It's hard for, shift workers. I think that that is something that we'll be seeing in the coming session that is going to be a huge priority to deal with amongst all of our, other things that we are working on. And it's a passion area for me because I see my community really, really struggling with it. And it is a common thing across the nation right now. So Washington State, luckily, is ahead in the game, but there's so much more work that needs to be done for our community.
Thank you. And Ms. Claywell, is there an issue or policy that wasn't covered that you feel you'd like to address?
There is. The Parents' Rights Initiative that passed in spring of this year and became law on June 7th. I'm very concerned that the superintendent of public instruction is not following the law and he's encouraging schools to ignore the law. I expect our elected officials to, follow the law. And it's quite obvious our parents are supportive of this move. And I fully support the Parents' Rights Initiative. I know there's two parts of it that are kind of on hold right now due to a court decision that's hasn't been fully made, but I really think it's not okay for the government to try to usurp parents' raising of their own children.
Thank you. And we've come to our final question, and Ms. Claywell, we'll begin with you. Please tell us something about your life experience that might surprise or intrigue voters. You would have 60 seconds.
Okay, so I don't, has anybody heard of the Danskin Triathlon? The triathlon, the Danskin has been going on for I don't know how many years, but in 2005, I decided I wanted to do the Danskin. And what that is, it's a race where you swim for a half a mile in Lake Washington. It's a 12.4 mile bike ride and a 3.1 mile run. Well, if you can run by that point. Anyway, so I did that in 2006. It was really great experience getting ready for it and then completing it. And then in the following year, 2007, I trained and did it with my sister, who's 2 years younger. So that's my story.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Fosse, any life experience that might surprise or intrigue voters?
Well, again, kudos to you, Ms. Claywell. That is, I can't say that I've done that. Um, I I was actually a small business owner for about a decade, and people always like this little tidbit. I ran a plant nursery, and I would go and I would teach at schools and libraries about carnivorous plants. And I would often use that to go volunteer at places like the Denny Juvenile Justice Center. So give people a little like inspiration, like care for life and the whole entire healing aspect of like growing plants and having something to care for and something to grow and blossom. I don't know, it reminds me of kind of like that same vision that I have for community. Uh, and that's been a background. And I think that's why I have like a sense for, kind of fighting for small business because I know how much that is a struggle. But yeah, carnivorous plants.
Thank you. Okay, that was our final question. And that we'll wrap up by saying that the League thanks these candidates for joining us and for running for office. We encourage you to explore additional information about these and all candidates. Recordings of our forums, including a forum with candidates for LD 38 Position 1, held during the primary election, are available on the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County website, YouTube, and podcast channels. Find links at swvsnowho.org. Vote411.org, sponsored by the League, is another good source of information. Dates: the Snohomish County voter pamphlet will be mailed starting October 16th, and ballots will be mailed starting October 17th. And the last day to vote is Election Day, which is November 5th, Tuesday, November 5th. Please be a voter. Thank you to our League Candidate Forum team, and special thanks to Dave Moon and the Sultan School students at turkpride.tv who made this live stream possible. And of course, thank you all for joining us. This concludes our Candidate Forum.